Photography Club podcast. I'm your host, Sue. If you are struggling to find happiness, or you always feel stressed, or you just never feel like you're doing enough, maybe your to-do list is always growing. Like every single day, you can never get done your tasks, and this can feel very overwhelming and stressful. We're going to talk about that today, and we are going to be reviewing a book that I read recently. This is The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. This book, I'm not even kidding. I feel like I say this about all the books, but this book changed my life. Like after I read this book and I started doing some of the things I've learned from this book, my mindset has changed so much, and I've felt so much less stress and so much happier and really just like more fulfilled every single day. It's like waking up and immediately being excited to start your day because you are just so happy. So the Declaration of Independence states that every person has the right to pursue happiness. But what this implies is that happiness is something that needs to be chased. That is not something you have right now. And this book teaches you that happiness is actually something you can have at any moment in time. Anyone can have it. It's not something you need to chase. It's something you already have. This book also really reshaped my mind around success, because success is different to everyone. I talked about this in one of my podcast episodes. I answered the question, what is success? And I honestly can't even remember what my answer was, but the truth is success is different to everyone, and the way that you measure your success is going to determine how happy you are. So this is actually a really important question. If you're a high achiever, it can be a little bit more difficult for you to find happiness because you are constantly chasing this bigger vision that you see for yourself. You constantly have so many things that you need to get done or that you want to get done in order to get to where you want to be. But this is actually the thing that is stopping you from being happy, because you're measuring your success by that future vision you see for yourself. But the thing is, that vision is always going to move. No matter how much you get done, that vision is always going to get further and further away of that future version of yourself that you want to be, because you are growing and you are moving towards that vision, and it's going to keep moving. And so this book basically teaches you to measure your success backwards by how far you've come. Like when you're feeling down or unsuccessful, stop and think about what you've actually gotten done and how far you've come, instead of comparing your current self to where you want to be. So basically, it just teaches you to be grateful for what you already have and appreciate your wins and the things that you've accomplished, rather than being disappointed about what you don't have. So when you are grateful for what you already have, that is the gain. You are in the gain. And when you are feeling discouraged because you're not where you want to be, you are in the gap of where you are versus where you want to be. And when I realized that, it's really just never being enough. If you feel like this and you're always so stressful, then you are never allowing yourself to accept where you are and how far you've come. You're never allowing yourself to be enough. And that's when it can get really discouraging to get things done, when you feel like the needle is never moving, you're never getting enough done. But when you're able to really celebrate those wins and celebrate how far you've come, you suddenly become so inspired and so motivated. There was this incredible story in the book. It was one of the ones that really moved me the most, and I just found it so inspirational. So I'm going to give you a quick little recap about it. The book told the story of an Olympic athlete who was upset because he hadn't achieved the medal he wanted to get. He was just really disappointed in himself and his ability to win the race. So he had one last Olympic race that he was going to do, and he decided to instead look back on everything he's achieved so far, because first of all, he was in the Olympics. Like, that's a huge achievement on its own. Even if you don't win a medal being in the Olympics, the fact that you got to the Olympics is huge. So, going into his last race, he decided that he is already happy and successful exactly where he is. And losing his last Olympic race could not have made him feel like a failure because he decided his life was made up of gains. So the fact that he was in the Olympics is a gain. And so he's happy already where he is. And he went into his last race with gratitude for his long, fulfilling career and just all of the happiness that he had for how far he's come, with a huge smile on his face. And do you know what happened when he changed that mindset? Not only did he win that race, but he broke a world record. So that just goes to show how much more you can get accomplished when you are focusing on the positive and not the negative. So this book also teaches you that any situation can be turned into a gain, no matter how bad it is. Basically, like finding the silver lining in the cloud. And that's even like why failure is not actually failure. If you learned something, if you tried something and it didn't go how you expected it to, but you learned from that, then in the future you can try again but do it differently. That's not actually failure because you are gaining that experience. So basically, just think about what you can take away from any experience, because anything can be turned into a gain. And anytime you're feeling just like negative feelings, stop and take a minute to think about what you're getting out of this situation. So a small example would be, I actually, a few months ago, had a little problem with a client. I didn't communicate very good with this client. It was one who she was actually one of my first people ever doing my new business model with, where I now offer prints. And so the process is a little bit different with that. And she was just feeling a little surprised by the experience because I didn't communicate it good in the beginning, and we hopped on a call and the call did not go good. I'll just say that. She was very upset, and it was like no matter what I said, I could not resolve the situation. So I ended up just giving her a full refund and not working with her anymore. And that was a really hard moment for me. I was sad. Like, I was literally depressed over this situation that had occurred and angry. Like, I literally feel like I went through all of the stages of grief from this experience. And there were moments where I was angry because I was like, I did so much for her and she didn't appreciate any of it. And that is just me being in the gap. And after I read this book, it was shortly after this had happened, and I took a minute to think back on this situation. And a lot of the stuff that she was saying, although she said it in a very mean way, I could see the point to it. And what this experience actually helped me do is completely transform my business and the future experience that I bring to clients, the way that I communicate with clients. And my business is actually so much better off because of this conversation, that I had with this client. It taught me so much. And yes, it was so difficult and hard for me to hear, and an experience I would never in a million years want to go through, but I am better off because of it. And that is an example of turning a bad experience into a positive one and going from being in the gap to turning it into a gain. Because every single client I have from now on, from that experience on, is going to be better because of it. But this can work for any situation, even ones that you would think there's not possibly anything positive you can get out of this. You can turn anything into a gain, even if you got paralyzed or became blind. Like, even situations as extreme as that, there are gains to come from that. Even like terrible loss of losing someone, you can really turn anything into a gain. And I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard and it takes practice, but once you realize the mindset around it, it can seriously change your life. Because basically what this is taking control of your happiness. It is not giving outside factors the ability to control your happiness and your success. It is taking the power yourself and realizing you don't have to wait for anything to be happy. If you say to yourself, I'll be happy when I get this job, or I'll be happy when I make more money, when I book that vacation. Whatever it is, if you're saying I'll be happy when, the truth is you're never going to be happy. You can only choose to be happy right now with what you've got right now. Because if you're chasing this idea of happiness, you're never going to find it until you stop and realize you already have it. So happiness is realizing you are enough. You are doing enough, even if it feels like you're not, even if you had a bad day and you weren't very productive. I don't know about you, but literally when I'm not productive, I am so mean to myself. And I will make myself sick because of how angry and stressed I get. If I'm feeling a little bit sick and I have a slower day, I've gotten better about it, but in the past, I would literally make myself feel so sick with the stress of not getting done what it is I feel like I need to get done when your to-do list is just continually growing. So let's talk about how you can address that. One actionable step that this is actually a huge part of what has changed my mindset and changed my life after reading this book is doing this one thing, okay? And it is journaling. That sounds so simple, but seriously, and you only have to journal, it's so simple. At the end of the day, I want you to get a notebook and write down 3 wins you had for the day. These can be big or small. They can be literally, you made your bed. That is a win. That is a gain. Or it can be something big, like maybe you booked a photo shoot, maybe you booked a client, maybe you had a really tough conversation, maybe you worked out. Just write down 3 of your wins at the end of the day. And if you have more wins, go ahead and write down more. Write down as many as you want, but you have to at least write down 3 of them. And then write down 3 wins that you want to have the next day. And this part is huge, writing down the 3 for the next day, because what I realized, even if I would plan out my week in my calendar, when I went to bed the night before, I hadn't really been thinking about the next day and really what I wanted to get done the next day. But when you think about this the night before, it sets your day up for so much success and so much momentum right away when you first wake up. And it's like that saying, a productive day starts the night before, which it's so true. And so I would write down my 3 gains that I wanted to have for the next day, and I would actually put them on a sticky note and stick it to my phone. That way, when my alarm went off in the morning to wake up, I would see the 3 wins and know exactly what I need to do. And I think a big part of overwhelm comes from really just not knowing what to focus on, not knowing where to prioritize your energy leads to overwhelm, and it leads to this feeling of not feeling like you're getting anything done. So when you take time the night before to already know what your 3 biggest things are that you need to get done, that's just going to set you up for success and help you have a much more productive day. And then at the end of that day, you can reflect, did you get those 3 things done? But again, don't be hard on yourself if something came up and you didn't get done one of your 3 things that you had wrote down the night before. Instead, you're just going to replace it with a different win that happened that day. And what happens over time is your brain kind of gets addicted to this. It's going to look forward to those wins. It's going to look for those wins, and they're going to get easier over time. And your brain is going to look for harder wins, ways to push yourself. And I've noticed this already. Going back to finding happiness and how it's basically you're not letting outside factors determine happiness. It's coming from the inside. And if you're in the gap, then your happiness is being determined by outside factors. And if you're in the gain, then you don't need anything outside of yourself because you're driven internally. And when you don't need things, you feel so much more peace when you're not I need to make money. Even if you need to pay rent that month, you need to get the money to pay rent, you don't need that money to be happy. Yes, you might need it to pay rent, but that money is not going to make you happy. If you're feeling so stressed because you need to get that money, you're not going to feel happy when you get that money because you're relying on outside factors to determine your happiness. So you need to find a way to be happy internally and not let the outside factors determine that. And the craziest thing is, by no longer needing what you want, you are actually more enabled to get it. You can freely perform and flow rather than obsessing on how it will turn out. So when you no longer need these things, you're able to just focus on what it is you can control and not focus on what you can't control, because there are certain factors you can't control, and those are what you're letting determine your happiness. But when you don't need it, you want it, you focus on what you can control, and you're more enabled to get the things that you want. Thinking back to the Olympic race that I told you about earlier, his success came from no longer needing to win. It came from already being happy and fulfilled with where he was at. He didn't need to win that race to be successful, but because he no longer needed that to fill his fulfillment and success, he got it. It came to him. Have you ever heard that quote, "Money doesn't make you happy, but happiness makes you money"? This is exactly what that means. And when you change your mindset to think like this, and you just go about things not needing anything, people will be drawn to that energy. If you take anything away from this podcast episode, please let it be the journaling. Please try out the journaling. 3 wins from the day and 3 wins you want to do the next day. And really just remember to celebrate your progress, celebrate how far you've come, even literally starting your business. Like maybe you feel overwhelmed because your business isn't where you want it to be. You wish you're comparing yourself to people, you see all these things that other people are doing. Literally stop and take a minute to realize how far you've come, because the fact that you even started a business, the fact that you put yourself out there, those are huge things that should be acknowledged and celebrated, because you're doing it. You're doing the thing. I would love it if you commented one of your recent wins or gains, no matter how big or small. I would love to see what they are. So feel free to leave that in the comments. And here's to learning and growing our photography business together.